I'm sitting in a motel 3 towns away from home. The wallpaper is peeling at the corners, the bedspread smells like bleach, and the air conditioner hums just loud enough to distract me from the sound of my own breathing. My phone buzzes again. Tom. My husband. 17 missed calls. 2 texts. Please just tell me you're safe. I don't respond. Instead, I stare at the photo in my hand. It's wrinkled, soft at the edges, like it's been touched too many times. It's of a man with tired eyes and a crooked smile. A man who wasn't my husband. Aaron. He's dead now. A car crash, they said. Immediate. Violent. No time for last words. No chance to say goodbye. I found out through a mutual friend, someone who didn't even know the full story. No one did. Except me. I fold the photo and tuck it into my journal. My hands are shaking. Maybe from the grief. Maybe from the guilt. Probably both. You'd think after cheating on your husband for almost 2 years, you'd stop believing you have the right to mourn anyone. But I did. I mourned him the moment I got that call. And when I hung up, I started packing. Jeans, toothbrush, the red dress Aaron once said made me look like poetry. Then I wrote Tom a note, I need some time. Please don't worry. That was it. No destination. No explanation. Just one final lie in a long chain of quiet betrayals. The truth. I left for my lover's funeral. Not to stand by his casket. Not to make a scene. Just to sit in the back, wear black, and cry for someone who never truly belonged to me. But who, somehow, still held the part of me I never gave to Tom. I loved 2 men. One with my body. One with my soul. And now that one of them is gone, I can't pretend anymore. I thought I could carry this secret to my grave, but his came first. And it dragged mine out into the open with it. What I didn't expect was what my husband would do when he found out. Because Tom didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He just unraveled. And when I came back home, after all the flowers had wilted and Aaron's name had stopped trending on obituary pages, I found something waiting for me. Not anger. Not revenge. Something worse. Something I never thought he was capable of. But I'll get to that. Right now. I need to remember how it all started. Because it didn't begin with an affair. It began with silence. Tom and I had been married for 10 years. We were the couple people described as stable. Not romantic. Not fiery. Just steady. Tom paid the bills on time, picked up the dry cleaning, and brought me tea every morning without asking how I slept. And that was the problem. It was all function. No feeling. He loved me, I know he did, but it felt like loving a houseplant. Watered. Maintained. Ignored unless wilting. I used to beg for connection. Ask me about my writing, I'd say. Tell me how you feel about anything. He'd nod, distracted, and kiss my forehead like I was a child asking for too much. Then I met Aaron. It was a weekend writing retreat in the hills. I wasn't even going to go. But Tom insisted. You've been talking about it for months. Go. Clear your head. Funny how that's exactly what happened. Aaron sat 2 chairs down during the poetry workshop. He wore a navy sweater with a coffee stain near the cuff. His notebook was full of scratched out lines and desperate metaphors. But when he read his work aloud, my chest tightened. He sounded lonely. And it mirrored mine. We talked after the session. About prose, heartbreak, marriages that felt like obligations. He was married too, 2 kids. We weren't looking for anything. But something found us anyway. It started with long talks at midnight by the fire pit. Then emails. Then phone calls. Then weekend trips for writing. He read my poetry like it was scripture. I memorized his laugh. We didn't say, "I love you," until month 9. And we never said, "I'll leave them for you." That wasn't the point. The point was, for the first time in years, I felt alive. Aaron reminded me who I was before I became a wife. A caretaker. A ghost. And he didn't just love my body. He loved the way I described rain. He remembered the first poem I cried while reading aloud. He made me feel like art. One night, while watching the stars from the hood of his car, he turned to me and whispered, "If I die before you, at least show up. Don't let me disappear like a secret." I laughed. Teased him about being dramatic. Now I can still hear his voice every time I try to sleep. And I did show up. But what I left behind. That's what haunts me most. The call came just after midnight. I was sitting on the couch, half watching a movie I'd seen a dozen times, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I nearly ignored it, until I saw the area code. His city. The woman on the line had a soft, shaky voice. She said her name was Meredith. Aaron's sister. She found my number saved under Lila, our usual cover. He didn't make it, she said. A drunk driver. Instant. He was driving back from a reading. The world didn't just shift, it disappeared. The silence after her voice faded felt louder than the news itself. I stared at the floor for I don't know how long, completely numb. Then I walked into the kitchen, found a pen and a sticky note, and wrote 5 words, "I need space. Don't call." I couldn't lie properly. I didn't have it in me. Not that night. Tom was already asleep upstairs. I slipped the note under his coffee mug, packed my bag in the dark, and drove. 8 hours later, I pulled into a sleepy little town with brick sidewalks and too many churches. I'd only been there once, with Aaron. He'd shown me the bookstore that carried his first self-published chapbook. Now, he was here again. In a casket. The funeral was small. Private. I stayed near the back, behind a column, sunglasses hiding the way my eyes refused to stop leaking. I didn't speak to anyone, didn't want to risk being asked who I was to him. But I watched. Every minute. Every flower. Every spoken word. And when they carried him out, I almost followed. Back home, Tom found the note while making his morning coffee. He waited a few hours before the worry kicked in. He called. Then texted. When I didn't reply, something in him shifted. Tom wasn't stupid. He wasn't the kind to yell or pry, but he had instincts. He knew me too well, ironically, not emotionally, but logistically. I was predictable. Responsible. Reliable. And suddenly, I wasn't. He opened my laptop. The email thread was still open. I'd forgotten to log out. There were no nudes. No declarations. Just poetry. Schedules. Dates. Train tickets. But it was enough. He read my travel logs. Found photos buried in my cloud. A scan of a handwritten letter Aaron had sent months ago. If this is all we ever have, it was still worth breaking for. Tom didn't call again after that. When I finally came home 2 days later, the house felt colder. And everything looked exactly the same, except his eyes. He didn't ask where I'd been. He already knew. When I walked through the front door, Tom was sitting at the dining table, still in his work clothes, staring at his untouched dinner. He didn't look up. I stood there with my keys in hand, unsure if I should drop my bag or run back to the car. Finally, he spoke. "Where did you go?" His voice was steady. Too steady. Like he'd rehearsed that question 100 times and still hadn't found an answer that would make it sting less. I swallowed. My mouth was dry. I just needed space. Air. Time to think. A pause. Then, without looking at me, he reached into a drawer and slid a piece of paper across the table. Face up. A hotel receipt. From 6 months ago. My name. Aaron City. 2 nights. 1 king bed. I froze. He finally met my eyes. And I saw it. Not rage. Just grief. The kind that hollows a person out from the inside. "I was willing to try," he said quietly. "Do you know that?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came. I knew we'd grown apart. I knew I'd let things get dull. But I thought we were still in it together. I thought you were just sad. Not somewhere else entirely. He laughed. Not out of humor. Out of disbelief. "You buried him like he was your husband, Claire." Those words hit harder than any slap. I sank into the nearest chair. "I didn't plan this, Tom. You didn't stop it either." Silence. Only the faint ticking of the wall clock and the low hum of the refrigerator filled the space between us. "Did you love him?" he finally asked. I hesitated. That alone was answer enough. But I still said it. "Yes. But I never stopped loving you, too." He exhaled through his nose. Like it physically hurt to hear that. "That's not the comfort you think it is." I didn't cry. Not then. Because crying meant I still deserved to mourn. And that night, sitting across from the man I married, the man who once said he'd love me through anything, I realized something awful. Some betrayals are so quiet, they don't echo. But they still break everything. The next morning, I told him everything. Not just the affair. But the pieces in between. The long silences. The near misses. The nights I'd come home and cry in the shower, hating myself for wanting more than one life could offer. Tom sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "So you were never going to leave me," he said flatly. "No." And he knew that. He did. He nodded like that was the most painful truth of all. I looked at him then, really looked. The man I married. The man I betrayed. The man who still hadn't raised his voice once through all of this. I didn't go to say goodbye, I whispered. I went to forgive him, for dying before we figured it out. For leaving me with nothing but words. That broke him. Not in a loud way. Not in a dramatic way. He just stood up and walked out of the room. Not out of the house. Not out of the marriage. Just away. For the next 2 weeks, we lived like shadows. No dinners together. No questions. No accusations. Just movement around each other like ghosts occupying the same haunted space. Then one morning, I came home from the grocery store and found a package on the doorstep. No return label. Inside was a printed manuscript. My name wasn't on it, but I recognized the words. My poems. My essays. My confessions. Pages pulled straight from the journals I thought I had hidden. Tucked between the pages was a note: "If you're going to write, at least make it worth the pain." My hands trembled. My breath caught. At the bottom of the note was a forwarding email address. A contact from a small indie publishing house. He'd submitted it. Under a pen name. Just to see if someone else thought the words mattered. They did. The editor wanted to talk. Said it felt urgent and honest. Said it read like the unraveling of a woman trying to hold two lives in the same hands. I sat on the floor with the manuscript clutched to my chest and cried until my ribs hurt. Tom hadn't forgiven me. Not really. But he gave me something even harder, freedom. Not as a gift. Not out of love. But because when someone strips you of every illusion, the only thing left to do is make something out of the wreckage. And somehow, he still believed I could. It's been 7 months since the funeral. I live in a small apartment now. 1 bedroom. Lots of light. Just enough space for a desk, a bed, and silence. Tom and I aren't divorced. We're something murkier than that, separated by wounds too deep to stitch, but not deep enough to sever completely. We meet once a week. Usually Fridays. He brings coffee, I bake something. We sit across from each other like old friends who knew each other in another life. Sometimes, we laugh. Other times, we sit in comfortable silence. But we never talk about Aaron. Or the affair. Or what we could have been if we'd both just spoken up sooner. Tom's wearing his wedding ring less these days. He's seeing someone now, I think. A woman from his office. He hasn't said it outright, but the way he looks at his phone now tells me enough. And I don't resent him for it. I think, in some backwards way, we both loved each other too quietly to survive it. My book comes out next month. It's called The Man I Loved While Married. It's not just about Aaron. It's about Tom, too. It's about the ache of wanting to be chosen when you don't even know how to ask. It's about the shame of finding joy outside your vows. And it's about how sometimes, 2 truths can exist at once. I loved my husband. And I loved another man. One gave me structure. The kind of love that feeds you every day but never leaves you full. The other gave me fire. The kind of love that burns you alive and leaves ashes in your throat, but my God, the warmth. Neither of them gets to keep me. Because maybe I was never meant to be kept. Maybe some women are built to be mirrors, reflecting back what others can't say, can't feel, can't admit. And maybe I needed to break everything just to find out what kind of woman I really was when no one was looking. Sometimes, love ruins everything. Sometimes, it saves your soul. And sometimes, you don't know which it was until long after the funeral. So now, I ask you this, if someone broke your heart just to save their own, could you still love them? Because I'm still trying to answer that myself.